Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch and welcome back to my studio. Today I prepared for you the second edition of Christmas Essentials. 10 more different projects, very easy, very fun to paint, which you could paint together with kids, which you could paint for Christmas cards, for some decoration and just for Christmas mood. Let's start. For the project we will need watercolors, watercolor paper, cold press paper because it has nice fine texture. Another cool idea, already pre-made watercolor cards. Paint on one side, you could just send it right away as a greeting card. I will paint on these paper cards. I will recommend you to have two brushes. The bigger and the smaller one are both synthetic and have a very nice fine tips. And we will need a paper towel. For a Christmas tree, as a main color, I'm taking a mix of phthalo green and a drop of sepia. It's our basic primary mix for all the collection, for all the lesson. And I have my fine brush. I hold my brush about 30 degrees and I start from the top of the Christmas tree with small, tiny little strokes. I hardly touch the paper. And with these small strokes, I shape the tree. And as you could see, I leave quite a lot of white space in between the needles, in between the branches. So later on, I could decorate this tree, put some ornaments. It's very random. I just keep in mind the primary shape, the basic shape of the tree, and I sometimes paint a few branches a bit aside to make it interesting. And the more I go down, the longer and thicker I'm painting the green brush strokes. If that's a little bit too complex for you to paint like this, you could outline the Christmas tree and fill it in with the greenery. I like to have some variety in the tree. That's why I keep my brush, I move my brush in different directions to make it a little bit more natural, a little bit more messy. I was looking for a word, but I think messy would describe it nice. So I keep in mind some Christmas tree which was decorated with kids, and it's always a little bit chaotic. So that's what my goal to show. I want to put that Christmas tree in a pot. You could do the same or just leave it like this. For a pot, I take burnt sienna. And first of all, I outline the pot. I think it could be something like this. I just paint some outline, and with some pressure on the tip of the brush, I paint this top line. It's the most dark part because it's in the shade of the tree, and I have in mind some boho style or IKEA style pots, like handmade pots, very very cozy, how it says here in Norway, cozy things. So how I create the texture, I just move wavy my brush and I leave quite a lot of space. So the pot is ready. Let's come to the fun part, to decorate the tree. For decoration, you could choose any color you like. I think I would stick with red, with permanent red, and I might add some of burnt sienna. And it's pretty fun. You just find some white spots, paint circle, leave some white area around because that's where the light comes, and just fill everything in, and more and more and more. That's very important to leave this white area because usually our ornaments, they are glossy, and this texture has very sharp borders between light area and shady area and dark area. That's how we create this feeling. It's as we paint it relatively small, relatively little for a postcards, no need to go much into the details. You just have fun and imagine as you decorate a real tree. So there is always some variety, some difference. Try not to be too symmetrical, not to bring the same ornaments to the other side. And as I said, for the variety, I would like to paint few ornaments in burnt sienna color. First, I will paint some baubles, in the same principle as I did with red ones. And maybe later on I add some garland around. It could be a nice trick when you somehow hang your baubles under the branches. You just need to paint not the whole circle, but about half of the circle. And if that feels a bit too dark, wash your brush, dry your brush with a paper towel, and remove the extra color. And your brush will work as a sponge. It just removes all the unnecessary color, and you get very pleasant boho style baubles decorations. Of course, you could decorate your tree with different ornaments. You could put some stars on the tree. You could put some lawn-shaped details. For example, let's paint something. How you call it? Let's paint something lawn. And to paint this type of decoration, you just paint few brush strokes and then connect them, outline them. This is it. For the final touch, I would like, with a permanent red, I would like to put some garland. It's, in principle, it's just dots. And as usually we hang garland in this spiral style, it's nice to follow that idea, to keep that idea in mind and hang your garland a little bit in a spiral way, just like this. And of course, if you think your tree is a little bit too much white space is in the tree, now you could fill in some gaps and add few more details. And now our cutest ever Christmas tree is ready. Let's paint a stocking. First outline should not be too complex. And the upper part, I would suggest that we imitate the knitting texture. And how I do it, I just
paint with random small brush strokes. And that's how I imitate these Norwegian, Scandinavian ornaments. And so I think this is pretty easy, this technique, but it brings to lovely results. It also could be imitating the fur if you make the strokes a little bit tinier. And now you just paint a thick brush stroke. Wash your brush, dry your brush on your paper towel, and soften the edges, and just let your watercolor flow. It feels like you drag out the color from the coloring parts down. Of course, the bottom part of the stocking is more dark because it's the light shines from top to bottom. That's why I take more of permanent red and just go along the bottom edge and let watercolor distribute by itself. You could stop right here, but if you want to add some special touch, you could paint a small fir tree getting out of this stocking, just like this. Isn't this cute? And this small candy. No need to go too much into details. Some idea is just enough. Let's paint gift boxes. I want to paint a small pyramid with gift boxes. First, I just outline the boxes. The first one, I wash my brush. I dry my brush with a paper towel. And I go along the edges and just soften the edges. And I distribute a little bit the color from this outline inside my painting. The only one moment where I would like to go for the second time, it is this border between the lid and the box, because usually the lid creates a big shade on all the box itself. Let's put a green box on the top. It's our mix of phthalo green and a drop of burnt sienna. Let's paint the second box a bit smaller, in a bit of a different shape, but again with the lid. I like to paint these lids, and this time I will paint the gift box with some diagonal texture, like a gift wrap, and it will create a nice contrast with red and relatively soft bottom box. Now we have something very ornamental, geometrical. And on the very top, I'm thinking I will paint just some nice mix of red and green on the top. Let's first paint an outline, and I allow my watercolor mix. That's how I like to paint. And this box I would like to decorate with silky red band on it. So to paint it, I just paint a bold brush brush stroke, and with the tip of the brush I correct a little bit to make it look even. I want to paint that lead. I step a little bit aside, so I'm not painting this line right on there, because that creates some uneven, it catches the eye. And let's paint let's paint on the top this nice big ribbon, very festive. One top side should be narrow, and for the bottom side paint a big bold brush stroke like this. So let's paint a snow globe. You could use any round thing to outline, to help to outline it. Then with ultramarine blue, with the tip of the brush, I paint this watery outline around all the circle, and then I wash my brush and I go again along the edges with the belly of the brush and soften the edges. I just leave very white area on the very top, because it will be the place where the light goes and it creates this reflection. And now I'm painting a wintry landscape inside one hill and another hill. Try to paint them slightly different, add some variety and add some shades inside. And while it's all drying, sorry, while that's all drying, let's paint the bottom, this nice bottom golden part. With burnt sienna, I paint one stroke, in symmetry another stroke, and I connect them with some roundy shape and try to avoid the straight line. It's not that nice. And that's now comes your imagination, because you could either imitate one of snow globes you have at home, or create some ornament by yourself. I would suggest to, first of all, to vary the thickness of your brush strokes to make it more intriguing, to make it different from row to row. And that's how you feel in all the area of the globe. I paint the upper part on the top of our snow globe, and I try to add some design and texture on this area. The more different brush strokes you have, the more interesting it gets. You could, for example, wait until the circle part is completely dried if you do not like this too much bleeding. For me, I like this feeling of vivid watercolor. I'm checking how it is inside. Inside it's okay. I would like to paint a Christmas tree. Inside I'm mapping, and I would like my Christmas tree be about here. And with small tiny brush strokes I am painting a tree. I leave a lot of white area between the green brush strokes, because that's how you get the feeling of snow on the branches, the snow on the tree. So please be careful and do not paint the tree in one branch. It's very important to leave a lot of white areas. And my tree is hidden behind the front hill, so I'm not painting branches here, but I'm painting quite a lot on the right side. And that's how my tree and my globe are looking now. Let's paint a nice ornament, a nice glass toy. First paint outlines. I want to make it in this shape, but of course the same principle goes to any shapes you are going to paint. I wash my brush. I go along the edges, and sometimes I leave gaps of just white paper. These very sharp and not soft edges, which is very good for bringing the idea of glossy texture. Glossy texture usually creates this very bright contrast between light parts and dark parts. I want to put inside this this ornament extra decoration. I put small dot. I paint strokes from it. It reminds me some vintage ornaments which we had in my childhood on the Christmas tree, and that's how you recreate this nice idea. Let's paint this handle, outlines and few tiny strokes, and with dotted line the hanging part. Of course, you could always add a little bit more of contrast if you like. For example, to the bottom part, it's usually the darkest part of glass shapes, and you could go with very bold mix, not watery, it's important, but with bold, more dry mix. You could even go right directly to your palette and go along the edge, and that's how you add more contrast to your painting. Painting Snowflake, it's all about your fantasy. The only thing you need to do is to find the center and paint the not strings, the hands of the snowflake. Usually, not usually, all snowflakes, they have six parts, so we are going to paint 6. Now, of course, many people just paint it in 8, but let's be more precise. And now the fun part comes. You could decorate your snowflake as you like, as your imagination tells you, but the tricky part is that should be all similar, all a bit symmetrical. If that's difficult for you to get, that's all right. Try just to repeat the elements, what you have. For example, I paint 3 strokes on each part I do not care if they are of the same size or the same length, but I care that they are 3 and that they goes in about the same area. You could add very different ideas to your snowflake. It's very relaxing. It's really, it's a big field for imagination to be applied. And I personally, I like that it's all a little bit uneven. It looks very crafty, very special, very unique. And I encourage you to try it and to create your own snowflakes. But of course, if painting without a pencil drawing a bit stressful for you, that's all right. You could, for example, at least paint the skeleton of your snowflake and then paint the ornament inside. I like to add small little tiny details to everywhere. Make it shiny, bright, special. And the more different small little details you have, the more interesting it looks like. So do not stop and add different details. For a branch, as a main color, I'm taking burnt sienna, and I imagine that my branch will grow like this, maybe with some small branch around. Just map this out. No need to be that very precise, and take our basic mix of phthalo green and burnt sienna. Make it rather bold, and then with just brush strokes, very brave and very sharp. I move my arm, move my wrist very quick. I do not try to make these slow line. It does not really work. To imitate this idea of sharp spruce, we need to paint sharp. We need to paint in sharp moves. And if sometimes your brush strokes a little bit uneven or maybe a little bit too thick, that doesn't matter. First of all, that creates the volume. Secondly, it creates some variety. So, and thirdly, it's very, very, very good practice for your brush stroke skills. So don't skip this. And I think it's much more fun and much more useful when you train your hand, not in painting just brush strokes. It's boring, but once you put it into some practice, into a real picture, that suddenly gets much more interesting, kind of challenging, but much more useful for your painting skills. So we painted this branch. I would like to add some texture for this branch, and I wash my brush. I grab some burnt sienna. I add dotted line around across the main branch to imitate the texture of the of the spruce. And now I'm going to paint a pine cone. I use burnt sienna, and I start to press my brush, just pressing my brush, and then let it go. I do not move my brush, I do not make brush strokes, it's more like a stamping technique. You have to leave white space between these stamps, between these strokes. That creates the volume of the pine cone and imitates the texture. As firstly we paint, it's a little bit aside, a little bit around, and then we go to the end or tip of the pine cone, and our brush strokes are getting smaller. No need to press all your brush, just half of the brush. And that's how you create smaller brush strokes. And the more you get to the end, the smaller your strokes are. And it's nice to add some smaller details around. We get a really nice pine cone. Let's add some topping for it and hang it on a branch. Always nice to add some darker texture to one side, because sun or light shines from one direction, which means this part is lighter and this part is darker. And this is it. The most Christmassy bird is a cardinal bird. I prepared permanent red, and I start to paint from the nose of the bird, triangle, just a triangle. Firstly, I'm outline the bird, some curvy area, and then these feathers on its back, and some diagonal line. We go down. You could always correct. And of course, if that's a bit too stressful, challenging to paint like this, you could always draw an outline. But it's kind of fun to paint in this way, without drawing. It really free you and allow you to experiment a little bit more. So around here should be the wing. So I map it out with some brush strokes. You could see I do not go into the details. I add some variety to brush strokes, just like this. I imagine my bird is sitting on a branch. To make it easier, I map it out already, this branch. With I always prefer to paint in some dotted line, not in a plain line. Again, for some variety. So let's put the bird on the branch. One foot is slightly smaller, another one is slightly longer, but in principle you just paint 3 half circles to imitate the bird's feet. And let's map out the beautiful long tail, which goes from on the other side of the branch. So let's leave some area, some space in it, and paint with some pressure on your brush, just in brush strokes. You see, 1, 2, 3 brush strokes, the tail is done. let's add few details. Firstly, I would like to switch to burnt sienna, or you could take any black, because we are going to paint this dark area and eyes. When you paint birds, eyes are the key part. You paint the circle, you leave white area of paper around. It should be very sharp white area, and that's all. That's all what you need. But it's very important to have this white spot in the eye. Let's add some dark texture. I think I'm going to add a little bit of neutral tint, so any black. For this ornament on the bird. It's just a few tiny details, but they are very, very important. I switch to the red, to permanent red, and with the tip of the brush, I create the texture, the feathered texture. I love to leave a little bit more of white space. And to make it nice, I would recommend you always keep in mind how the feathers grows on a bird. You could say so. For example, in here they goes in this direction, then they turn a little bit. It's nice if you could just drag out some colors from the darker part, just like this. A little bit more pressure, a little bit less pressure, but you that's how you create this nice fluffy feeling. The more you get under the wing, the darker feathers are. So from about this area, I start to mix my permanent red with burnt sienna, and you see how it creates the shade. I could even add a few strokes to the tail. Let's paint the wing. For the wing, for the contrast, I want to paint it with bigger brush stroke and with more diluted water. I keep my brush a little bit on its side and move from top to bottom. Just like this. Again, I leave a little bit of white space, white area. I add, for variety, I add some burnt sienna. And the last probably thing is the nose. Sorry, I forgot how it really called for birds. So I just cover it very carefully with small little brush strokes and soften it with water. That's in principle, this is it. What's missing is some accent on the branch. Let's paint the branch once again with dotted lines, but now try to put the darker lines on the different parts. For example, here is some missing point. I will put some texture here. Always move with some dotted style, and that creates this wooden texture. For the feet, I'm taking neutral tint, same as we took for this part, and with small dotted moves, I cover feet. That's how our bird looks like. It feels like I could add few more brave brush strokes to the wing. That's what I'm doing now, and now it's ready. I would like to hang mistletoe on a band, on a silky band, but firstly I paint in all this group of mistletoe branches together. I start with the tip of the brush and I paint the stems. I bring them all to one point, and from this point, with the tip of the brush, it's about 30 degrees to the paper, I paint some curvy lines. Right now I'm just mapping out how my mistletoe composition, mistletoe bouquet will hang. It's important that you keep in mind the shape of the whole group. No need, if you paint from some reference, no need to paint each and every branch. You just need to catch the idea of how it grows, but usually it's some C shape, and everything comes a little bit to this logical end here. Now let's paint leaves. And painting leaves, it's very fun. I put my brush on a tip to some place, I add some pressure and I release some pressure. And now to the other direction, I add some pressure, I release some pressure. The more you move your brush around in different directions, the more interesting and natural your branch will look like. You could try to paint not from the branch to the edge, but from the edge to the branch. And that creates the variety. What we are looking for is some variety in all the elements. So it's completely fine to move your hand in different directions, try to paint leaves in different directions. What's important that you remember that they hang, they attach to the branches, and they all look a little bit down. So that should be the move of the whole group. They could intersect the leaves. They could, we could see more like edge of the leaf. We could see it flat. We could see the side of the leaf. So it's really quite relaxing thing to paint. Again, if you paint from reference, try not to paint everything. Just find few more, or just find a few really nice leaves, catch them, and paint others just with a free hand. I think this is enough with leaves. Let's add some berries. Berries are white, and how we are going to paint white? We just paint with gray, and for gray I mix a bit of green with a bit of red, and that's how it creates this grayish texture, very diluted. We are not going too much into details, and with the tip of the brush I just paint some circles and shades in these circles. So circle and shade on one side. The only important thing here is to paint shades on one side. In my case, it's on the right side, because I imagine that light comes from the left. So the lighter area is on the left. That's why I add shade always on one side. That's the big mistake when you somehow you forget about these shade things and paint shady area in different ways in different directions that really strike the eye. No need to paint too much. I think that's enough to imitate the feeling of real mistletoe. Let's paint red nice band on the top, just permanent red. I imagine that my band will grow or comes up a little. I start to paint it like I paint leaf. Tip of the brush, some pressure, less pressure. That's half of the band. And again, less pressure, more pressure, and connect everything. One more on this side. Try to avoid being too symmetrical as I try to remind you. One side, you could come back from top to bottom, and in another side. The more curvy you paint it, the nicer. Some band could go along the leaves, just like this. And let's put something on the greenery part. It feels like I could add a little bit more thickness to the band itself. And this is it. For painting Poinsettia, I take permanent red and I find the middle part and I keep my brush about 30 degrees to the paper, and firstly I paint the middle of Poinsettia. Usually it has some knots, knotted looking middle, so I create this. And then I place my brush in one of the dots. I press on the brush, on the belly of the brush, and then I release the pressure. And that's how I create these Poinsettia leaves. And once again, it's nice when they are a little bit different, and then when they are overlapping. To add variety, you could wiggle a little bit your brush. Let me show you. You put your brush, press a little bit, and then move, for example, to the right, a little bit to the right, and then release the pressure. And that's how you create this movement in the petals. You could wiggle a little bit the brush and release the pressure. Try to be not symmetrical. Try to add some variety. The more variety and the more curvy lines you have, the more interesting and unique your flower will be. Another advice, now we are getting to inconvenient part. Let's say if you are left-handed, it probably will be the opposite side. It's very tempting to turn the paper, and that's okay. But I'm encouraging you to move your wrist around. Why? Because that creates uneven and unsymmetrical brush strokes. You could try it in different flowers and in different papers, and you will see how it changes. It really changes a lot when you either move your wrist or your paper. So we have pretty lovely flower already. I would like now to make my mix a little bit bolder, just a little bit bolder, because I'm going to paint the second layer. I put my brush in between these two petals, and in principle I paint the same. I add some pressure on my brush, I release. Add pressure, release the pressure. Add pressure, release the pressure. If you feel like it's a too big gap, you could add more petals for the bottom side. It's nice if you manage to get this second layer slightly darker, because the second layer, it's underneath your the first layer of flowers and under in the shade of this upper layer, so that will look very natural. And I'm not happy with this shape, so I'm just fixing it with the tip of the brush. I correct the shape. I might add one more petal about here. Another thing you could try instead of going from in out, you could go from out of the flower back to the middle. For me it looks a little bit weird, but sometimes it's handy. You could correct the shape with the tip of the brush and always try to add variety to the petals, to the leaves, just like this. Now let's paint some dotted, some strokes inside the flower to imitate these stamens. And let's add some greenery. I'm taking our primary mix, basic mix of phthalo green and burnt sienna. And Poinsettia leaves, they have the same shape as the flower. So, I think it's not nice. So we paint them in the same manner. Maybe try to go from top to bottom. I like more brush strokes when they goes from this direction, from center to a side. I think that makes them a little bit more sharp. But I think it really depends on how you organize it, what's convenient for you. As a small, tiny little details, I think would be nice to add just a small spruce branch. Just simple brush strokes, nothing extraordinary, but somehow it brings air into our composition. Don't overdo it, and few dark green spots in the middle, and our poinsettia is ready. I'm going to show you a very cool way to paint Christmas baubles. Take a round glass, cup, anything with round edge, and color the edge with watercolor. It should be not too diluted, rather creamy. Don't be greedy. That should be a nice amount of everything, nice amount of color. Then turn your glass, press it on the paper, remove, wash your brush, and then go along the edges of this nice circle and allow watercolor flow inside the bowl. Help it a little bit to distribute. It's nice if you leave some white areas, just like this. Let it be a very random, so like watercolor flows, like it finds its way. Maybe add few more color drops, especially in the bottom area. And I love this way of painting because it allows you to paint perfectly round circle. And to finish it, just few lines for the top and a dotted line which will imitate the thread. And this is it.
Thank you so much for painting with me. I'm wondering which one was your favorite project. How are you doing with Christmas mood and what you would like to paint next? See you next time. Bye bye.